Hi, Jim Krzan here, and welcome to 2023. Hey, during the holiday season, Joe Biden signed into law this new budget bill, officially called the Consolidated Appropriation Act of 2023. And in it was the Secure Act 2.0. For those who might remember, the Secure Act came about 3 years ago, almost to the day. And its purpose was to help average Americans get their retirement back on track. This bill does more of the same. In both cases, the Secure Act and Secure Act 2.0 was really geared toward the employer, making it easier and more accessible for employees to participate in a retirement-based program while at work. There were some aspects of the original bill and this one that are more for individual content. And that's what we're going to talk about today, specifically 5, 6, 7 different items that may very well have an impact on our own planning. So let's get right at it. The very first one is RMDs are being pushed back. As you might remember, before the Secure Act, it was 70 and a half. After the Secure Act, or 2020, it became age 72, and now it'll be pushed to age 73, and then further out, age 75. So effectively, anyone who is turning 72 this year can wait until next year to start required minimum distributions. And in 2033, those who are not yet 75 can push that off a year before starting their RMD as well. Another change is they eliminated the required minimum distribution on Roth 401ks. This was something that really didn't impact most of our clients, but effectively, if you had a Roth 401k and were of the age of required minimum distribution, you would have to start taking money out of your Roth 401k. Had the money been in a regular Roth IRA, there's no RMD requirement. So what this did is it just simply aligned the two. Now, any money sitting in Roth can accumulate tax-free, essentially in perpetuity. Another change has to do with reducing some of the tax penalties should somebody miscalculate required minimum distribution and not take out what they needed to. The prior law was any amount that you did not take out that you should have was subject to a 50% tax or a 50% penalty. That penalty has now been reduced to 25%. And more importantly, if you've got good reason for the mistake and have taken corrective action, that penalty may in fact be reduced to 10%. So that's a substantial reduction in the potential penalty. Another penalty reducing event has to do with those who take money out of their IRA prior to 59 and a half. As many of us know, that if you take money out prior to 59 and a half, you are subject to a 10% penalty. Well, what they did is they provided 4 other opportunities that didn't exist before that would allow us to waive off or reduce some of that penalty. The first has to do with domestic abuse or domestic violence. You can pull up to $10,000 out of your IRA and avoid 10% penalty. All distributions, by the way, are still taxable. Terminal illness will be treated as if you were over 59 and a half. Financial emergencies, as loosely defined, you can pull up to $1,000 a year. And then also national disasters with some qualification, up to $22,000 can be removed from IRA prior to 59 and a half without 10% penalty. Now, all of these are added to the original 10. Which are pulling money out for higher education expense, pulling money out as a first-time homeowner, that's up to $10,000 per person. So a couple each can invade their IRA up to $10,000 each. Healthcare cost for the unemployed, death, unreimbursed medical expenses, those unreimbursed medical expenses that exceed 7.5% of adjusted gross income, that money can be pulled out of an IRA without triggering the 10% penalty. Birth or adoption, up to $5,000 per event. Total and permanent disability. IRS levies, if the IRS is levying you because of unpaid taxes, you can pull money out of the IRA and avoid penalty. Still a taxable event. If you're an active reservist, you qualify for that same distribution. And as always, you can structure an IRA for what's referred to as a substantially equal payment or a Rule 72T and pull the money out without penalty. However, it does structure a distribution which might be well beyond the need for or the amount of money you would normally distribute. Other benefits, one is 529. The 529 benefit is quite unique. What it has done is it now allows for balances in 529 to be moved over to a Roth IRA. It's specific to the beneficiary and not the owner. And that beneficiary has to be the same beneficiary for 15 years. So the account has to be opened for 15 years with the same beneficiary. If we were moving money amongst 529s and changing beneficiaries as is available under law, that may change the amount of time we would have to expire before we can take advantage of this. The amount that you can move is up to $6,500 a year with a maximum conversion, if you will, of $35,000. Now, the money that gets moved over is treated as a contribution under the contribution rules. So that would take the place of a regular Roth contribution, but it's an opportunity to move money over. So for parents who are funding 529 and maybe funding more than what will be necessary because of scholarships or overfundedness, now we have an opportunity to move some of that early in a child's working career into a Roth that can make huge differences down the road in terms of their own personal retirement needs. Mandatory Roth catch-up. There's a few things here that I want to talk about. First, now, and this again is employer specific, you have the ability to allow the employer to designate match to a Roth. That was not available before. All employer contributions were all typically pre-tax. Now you have the ability. It may take some time for employers to actually figure out how they're going to do this electronically. Also, now there's a mandated Roth catch-up conversion that starts next year, after this year, for those who are considered highly compensated. So effectively, if you're highly compensated, earning over $145,000 a year, if you're doing a catch-up, which is now $7,500 per year, it has to go into Roth. You will no longer be able to defer that on a tax basis. It will be a taxable event, but you have the ability to move that money into a Roth. Also, they made a proviso starting in 2025 for those who are age 60 to 63 of an additional catch-up of $10,000 or 150% of whatever the catch-up dollar amount would be in the year 2024. It's a little confusing, but it gives those who are encroaching on age 60 the opportunity to actually put a bit more money away than what normally would be able to be put away. So those are also interesting changes that will affect how we deal with 401k management going forward. There's also a change to QCDs, or qualified charitable distributions. These are available to those who are taking RMD or anybody over age 70 and a half. So for those who are over 70 and a half who are not yet taking RMD, they can still take advantage of these QCDs. Now the definition of charity has changed a bit. It will now include charitable trusts. So CRATs, charitable annuities, many of these things can be included. And as part of the $100,000 a year maximum, up to $50,000 funding can be done in this area. The other big change is now the $100,000 maximum is being indexed for inflation. So that number should creep up on an annual basis. The last change has to do with spousal inherited IRAs. Now, with many clients, it just simply makes sense to take an inherited IRA for a spouse and roll that into his or her IRA. But in rare case, especially if one is inheriting an IRA and the deceased spouse is significantly younger, then it may very well make sense to keep it in a spousal IRA. And the rule change is now that spousal IRA, that spouse will be treated as the participant. And as a result, we can delay taking RMD until the deceased spouse would have turned age 73 or beyond. And that age may very well be later than what the surviving spouse's birth date would be. So it's a subtle change that may or may not affect many people, but it's a good planning tool in the event that it makes sense. Well, that's it, folks. Short and sweet. These are the areas that we're looking at. These are the areas that are getting phased in over the next year or so that we will want to look at and see if it has any application in what we're doing. As always, if you have any questions on any of this or anything else for that matter, please reach out. And with that in mind, I want to wish everybody again a very happy and healthy new year. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Take care.